Today, just coming off the conference, and a lot of times, you have these extreme highs, and then you can have extreme lows if you're not careful. And what I want to just talk about today is the issue of just hungering after God, just going after God with all of our heart. Because it's easy to feel like you're close to God when everything's going great, but when you're going through stuff, sometimes you feel like God has pulled away or that you're alone. And I'm here to tell you today that I believe that some of the most effective seasons in our life is when we're going through stuff, when we go after God and we're hungering after God, and when He will only satisfy us. And so I want to talk about that issue today. Jesus, when He was speaking, we call it the Sermon on the Mount, where He some of the greatest sayings that He could ever speak were said on that sermon. And I just said that all wrong, but don't worry about it. It's okay. So Matthew 5:6, Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Blessed are they that hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Jesus was talking to a group of people that understood what it was like to be physically hungry and physically thirsty. In that region, most people were very poor, and they probably understood exactly what He was talking about. It's a kind of a hunger that's a desperate kind of hunger. I doubt if any of us in this room have experienced that kind of hunger. I know at times when we've went to Africa and we've seen the desperation for just water, for food. I remember, it was about 8 years ago now, I think, where we took a water filtration system to Uganda, Pastor Robert's work, and we were able to put it in. And the thing that just really got to me was these little kids that were getting typhoid on a constant basis. They were getting horrible headaches because the way they would drink their water is they'd have this big vat, and it would take them forever to fill it, and then it took them forever to boil it. And each child got about a shot glass worth of water per day. And it's very hot, during those seasons. And I remember when we put in the filtration system where they had unlimited water, there was no cases of typhoid from that point on. And when you have unlimited, see, you and I, we can just go get a thing of water. We're hydrated all the time. We don't understand that kind of thirst or hunger living in America, most of us. But Jesus was speaking to people that understood what it was like to go without and to be desperate for something to eat or hungry. Jesus uses in the Greek some strong words here for hunger. It's pineo, which means to ardently crave food. Now, I'm not talking about when you crave a burrito supreme at Taco Bell. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when that's all you can think about, when you are sick because you haven't eaten, when you feel like your intestines are being ripped up inside because you're so hungry, you're not well, you're desperate for food. That's the kind of word that this is. And then he uses another strong word for thirst, which is dipseo, which means to painfully feel the need for water. He's using two metaphors that are directing us toward this idea of human desire. Jesus was a master at doing that. He uses these two metaphors to show us that these are natural things that the human body would go through. The desire for food and water are some of the strongest appetites that we have as human beings. When Jesus is talking about hungering and thirsting, it's not this rumble in the belly or a little dryness in the mouth. He's speaking about this intense craving for food and painfully being in need of water. And he's telling us that we should hunger and thirst like this in desperation after righteousness. It should be the same level of desperation. And those who do, Jesus says, are the ones that are blessed, who are content. See, I think that most of us have so many things that can fill that need. in our life that not permanent, temporary, but I think most of us have a temporary fix, and we don't always go after God like we should because we don't have the hunger or the thirst for it. I've entitled the message today, "When You Feel the Need," and I just want to talk a little bit about two guys in the Bible that went after God when the chips were down, and how you can hear their hearts here, and how God was the only thing on their mind. They were singularly focused on Him. And so I want to start with Moses, and I want to talk about when you're discouraged. This is a good time to go after God when you're discouraged. So let's talk about Moses. So I just want to just kind of give you a little window of what kind of day Moses was having, okay? He got kind of some crazy news from God in Exodus 33. It said, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Get going, you and the people you brought up from the land of Egypt. Go up to the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I told them, I will give this land to your descendants, and I will send an angel before you to drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go up to this land that flows with milk and honey.'" Now, that sounds good so far, right? "But I will not travel among you, for you are a stubborn and rebellious people. If I did, I would surely destroy you along the way." So that's the news Moses got. He'd been through this whole ordeal with the people, getting them out of Egypt, risking his life. They're wandering around. He's putting up with their stuff. And then God says, "Go ahead, but I'm not going with you, because if I did, I'd kill them all." Man, that's some tough news. Don't you think Moses was probably thinking, then what is all this for? Like, what have I been wasting my life on? And so Moses responds to God like this. And you start to see his heart here. It says, "One day Moses said to the Lord, 'You've been telling me, take these people up to the promised land, but you haven't told me whom you'll send with me. You have told me, I know you by name, and I look favorably on you. If it is true that you look favorably on me, let me know your ways so I may understand you more fully.'" I love that prayer, that conversation. "And continue to enjoy your favor. And remember that this nation is your very own people." I think the Lord is a little bit of a softy when it comes to His people, because the Lord replied, "I will personally go with you, Moses, and I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you." Then Moses said, "If you don't personally go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favorably on me and your people, if you don't go with us? For your presence among us sets your people and me apart from all the other people on the earth." The Lord replied to Moses, "I will indeed do what you've asked, for I look favorably on you, and I know you by name." And then Moses said, "Then show me your glorious presence." Man. You know, there's times where you just peel back all the layers of the onion and you just say, "God, it's just you and me. Show me your glory. Show me your presence. Show me who you are." And I believe those are some of the most precious times of growth in our Christian life that we can have. It's when you're discouraged and it's just you and God. The words of your friends and family, I mean, they're encouraging words, but they're not life-changing words, are they? They're not directional words. You know, and people it's just awesome. But when we only settle for words from people, we miss out on one of the greatest blessings, when we can get words from our Creator. And you can only get words from your Creator when you go after Him and set yourself aside apart for Him and listen to Him where no one else is speaking to you. And I love God's response. It says, the Lord continued, "Look, stand near me on this rock. As my glorious presence passes by, I will hide you in the crevice of the rock and cover you with my hand until I've passed by. Then I will remove my hand and let you see me from behind, but my face will not be seen." Man, would I love to be Moses, to witness that. So the next day, Moses is hiding in the cleft of the rock at Mount Sinai, and the Lord came down from heaven, and his glorious presence passed right in front of Moses, and the experience changed Moses' life. It gave him the courage to lead the people of Israel. So when Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst," he's talking about these two intense longings of the human body, and the Message puts it this way: you're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink and the best meal you'll ever eat. Moses had that kind of desire. Like, if I don't know you and you don't go with us, then what's the use? Don't let us leave this place. And I think that with all of us, even when it comes to the will of God in our life, our posture should be, Lord, I'm not taking one step forward unless I know you're with me. Unless I'm convinced that you're with me. And Moses was very smart when he said, it's your presence with us that separates us from all the other people of the world. That's how everyone knows you're our people. Your presence goes with us. You know, being extremely hungry is never pleasant, and when you're really hungry, it can really create some bizarre behavior in us. When you're hungry, you do foolish things. Sometimes we get irritable, and I think that's why fashion models look so mean. When you see a fashion model, and they're walking down the runway, they're like. They look angry. They're angry because they're hungry. If you threw a piece of pepperoni pizza on that runway, it would be like a feeding frenzy, man. There would be people, get out of the way here. They're starved. That's why they're so mad. That's why they're angry. They're starved. They weigh 26 pounds. Spiritual hunger and this desire does not come automatically. Don't think for a moment that you can just say, God created me this spiritual hunger and desire like it's a gift that, boom, you get it. No, it's got to be cultivated. You must create a place of emptiness that cries out to God to be filled. The intensity of your hunger will determine the dimension and the degree of your filling. You want me to say it again? My wife's talking to me over here. Whatever she says, I have to do. The intensity of your hunger will determine the dimension and the degree of your filling. Many times we lose our spiritual appetites because we've allowed our souls to be filled with natural, earthly, carnal things that don't last. Paul said in Colossians 3, he said, think about the things of heaven, not the things of the earth. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. I believe that's why so many people are dissatisfied today, is because they have focused on the worldly, on the carnal, to meet that need. And instead of turning to God to meet that hunger, they've turned to the world to meet that hunger. And it does take the edge off for a while, but it will never completely fill you. It'll never really alleviate the hunger pains that you feel deep down in your soul. It'll just leave you wanting more, and it'll leave you with a growing sense of dissatisfaction. Jesus said that those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, they're the ones that will be happy and satisfied and content. Moses went after God when he was discouraged. He didn't run from God, he went after God. The second person I want to look at in Scripture is David. David is my hero in the Old Testament, and David went after God during hard times. Hard times. Many believe that David wrote Psalm 42. I tend to believe it, but I'm gonna move forward with that in mind. But Psalm 42, listen to the words here. As the deer longs for streams of water, so I long for you, O God. I thirst for God, the living God. When can I go and stand before him? many believe that David probably wrote this during the time of Absalom's rebellion. So David had a major crisis in his family. There was a daughter that was raped by a brother. It was a mess. There was some messed up stuff going on in this family. His son Absalom then led a rebellion and was trying to overthrow David and his kingdom to become the king. So can you imagine when your own son is coming against you like this? And so he had failed as a king, when he had, and personally, when he had the affair with Bathsheba, and we talked about that a few weeks ago. He got through all that, but there was a price to pay, and he failed as a father because his family was a complete mess. And I don't know about you, but you ever felt like you failed in a few things in your life? You ever felt like you've come short of what you thought you were going to be or what you were going to do? You ever felt like you failed in a marriage or you failed with your kids and stuff? Yeah, we've all felt like we've been a failure at times. And David was going through this very difficult period when the very fabric of his family was falling apart. And it shows the struggle that most of us have when we go through hard times, where we vacillate between doubt and faith and despair or hope, or focusing on your circumstances that are right in front of you, or choosing to focus on God. We've all been there. And the writer of the psalm, which I believe is David, had a longing for God as intense as that of a deer that's searching for water and finds a stream. Such a longing. When you have a longing like that, it carries with it a single priority, and it's this: finding it. When that's all you can think about is I've got to find water to survive. I can't go another day without water, and I'm going to find it no matter what. That's the goal. And I think that you and I, if we could have a desire where we just say, God, I'm going to go after you. I'm going to be so desperate to be refreshed in my soul. I'm going to be so desperate for you to feed my soul so that I hunger and thirst after you. And my number one priority is finding you. Other issues aren't as important as I thought they once were. And I love this, that if David wrote this during the time of Absalom's rebellion, then David technically was separated from his people that he led. He was separated from his palace. He was separated from all of his possessions, and yet he never mentions any of that because David knows that stuff's just extra. The only thing he longed for was the person and the presence of God. You see, our longings reveal our priorities. They reveal the place that God truly holds in our hearts and our minds. The psalmist longed for God and not for the lesser things. Don't sell yourself short by longing for the lesser things. Don't give in to the cravings of the world that satisfy your soul briefly, but leave you more hungry and more thirsty and more desperate than ever before. David's soul was restless in its desire for fellowship with God. His number one priority was to have fellowship with God in tough times. And then another time that we read that David went after God, and most of us would agree, could identify with this, is when we're weary. You ever just feel tired? You ever just feel weary and wore out with life? Well, David found himself in that place. He was in a desert place. And Psalm 63, I love reading David's writings when I'm discouraged or lonely or weary or they're just great. So Psalm 63, check out what he wrote. "O God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. I have seen you in your sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. I will praise you as long as I live, lifting up my hands to you in prayer. You satisfy me more than the richest feast. I will praise you with songs of joy. He starts off this psalm establishing who God is in his life. God, you are my God. God's favor to David was so great that David was permitted to see him in the sanctuary where no one else would see him, the place where his power and authority was made manifest. David saw glimpses of this power, the majesty of God, and yet his heart was most captivated by the awareness of God's love and his goodness towards him. When you think about God, isn't that the thing that blows you away, is how much God loves you and his goodness towards you? When you know you don't deserve it. You're like, man, he's been so good to me. I've made a mess of things, and yet he's still good to me. There's times he should have bailed on me, and yet he's still there. That just boggles my mind. David is saying, we have a relationship, and I need to feel you. You ever cry out to God in a similar way? I don't feel you right now. I need to experience you. I need to feel you. I need to know that you're here for me. But it's interesting that in spite of their closeness, it kind of appears, if you read this again, that God isn't accessible or something, because David's next statement shows that he's chasing after God. He says, I earnestly search for you. Well, what's that about? If they're so close, why isn't God right there with him? Why is he having to chase after God if they're so close? Well, I think that sometimes God maybe wants us to chase after. Isn't true love really chasing after someone? I wonder if God is just sometimes allowing us to feel the distance. Not that he's ever walked away from us, but he wants us to go after him. Wives, isn't it great when you know that your husband has went out of his way to do something for you and chased after you? Right? Remember when you were dating? Remember how the pursuit was on? Remember how he did everything so great and opened the door and the flowers and the chocolates and the movies and remember how awesome that was? You're like, he's chasing after me. If he's still not doing that, you need to elbow him in the ribs and say, get with it, bud. The chase is still on. We love to be chased after. When you seek God for just the benefits, without pursuing intimacy with him, it robs you of the joy of truly knowing him. A lot of times we look at God as a vending machine. And we're like, God, help me with this, and this. Here's my prayer needs. Boop, 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 boop. Here they are. And they never stop. And sometimes I wonder if God's just sitting back going, man, come on, look into my eyes. You seek my hand to help you, but raise your vision higher. Look to my face. Get to know me. There's always going to be needs. There's always going to be things that we need. But isn't there something deep down inside you that's saying, man, I desire to know the person and the presence of God? Even if he never answers another prayer request for me, just knowing him is enough. Unless we hunger and thirst for God above all else, we're never going to find what we're ultimately looking for. And that's why Jesus said, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. Now, there's a fairly new translation out called the Passion Translation. Has anyone ever read it? It's crazy. It's crazy good. So check it out in the Passion Translation. So above all, constantly chase after the realm of God's kingdom and the righteousness that proceeds from him. Then all these less important things will be given to you abundantly. Isn't that cool? So The hunger and thirst for righteousness is going to show in the choices that we make. It's going to show in the way we live our lives. When the first signs of physical illness, when you know something's wrong and you have to go to the doctor, is usually the loss of appetite. Right? When you know that you're sick, you don't feel like eating. You lose your appetite. It's the same way when it comes to the illness of your soul. When you no longer have an appetite for God, it should be a warning sign that something's wrong. It got really quiet in here. If our band could come up, and I'm going to have our host come up. We're gonna just take communion together today. It's going to be awesome. I want to close with something that the prophet Isaiah wrote hundreds of years before Christ. But I just think it's so good. It says, "Is anyone thirsty? Come and drink, even if you have no money. Come and take your choice of wine or milk. It's all free. Why spend your money on food that does not give you strength? Why pay for food that does you no good? Listen to me, and you will eat what is good. You will enjoy the finest food. Come to me with your ears wide open. Listen, and you will find life. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. I will give you all the unfailing love I promised to David." My prayer today is that these words have simply generated a sense of hunger and thirst in you. That you're sitting here today going, you know what, that makes sense. And I want to cultivate hunger and thirst in my life for God. I want to chase after God. I want to make room in my life to where He is the one that I am focused on above all else. Jesus said, if you seek me, you will. He's a God that wants to be found. And what I love about it is that, yes, God in all of His majesty and, created the heavens and the earth, and that's just unbelievable. But for me, this simple person that I am, for me, knowing that He'll sit on a park bench with me, just me and Him, and hang out, blows my mind. When you're in your quiet place, whether it's your prayer closet or just wherever you find your quiet place with God, knowing that His presence is there with you, that to me is everything. That you can talk to Him and share your heart with Him and share what's going on in your life with Him. Man, I want to hunger and thirst after righteousness. I don't want to hunger and thirst after the things of the world. I don't want to settle for anything less than what God has provided for me. I want to long to know the person and the presence of the God of David and the God of Moses. I want to get a glimpse of His presence working on our behalf. I want to sense it when He's in the room. I never want to get too far from Him that I'm not sure if He's in the room or not. I want to know. I want to have that closeness with Him. Because when I know Him in the tough times, when the good times come, I'll know that He'll be with me. It's not just an emotional thing, but He is with me, and He's with you today.